What if true love began in a hospital cafe, where a 36-year-old barista served coffee to a dying man who would forever change his world? Lucas Reynolds arrived before dawn each morning at Massachusetts General Hospital's small cafe, brewing fresh coffee and offering warm smiles to exhausted doctors, worried families, and patients facing their darkest hours. He had a remarkable gift for remembering exactly how people liked their coffee, Wilson's Americano with an extra shot, Nurse Martinez's vanilla latte with almond milk, but more importantly, he remembered their hearts. His own father had passed away in this very hospital 5 years earlier after they'd finally reconciled. The painful memory of growing up in rural Maine, being disowned at 19 when he came out as gay, and the years of silence that followed had softened only when his father's illness brought them together again, rather than making him bitter. The loss had opened Lucas's heart wider to others' pain. The cafe wasn't just his job, it was his sanctuary, his way of spreading light in the darkest corridors of human suffering. But Lucas had no idea that the quiet man who started visiting his cafe every Tuesday and Friday morning would soon become the center of his universe. Alexander Alex Morgan was 43, though his illness made him appear older, his once strong frame now thin and weary from fighting kidney disease. He always ordered the same thing, medium coffee with a touch of cinnamon, not too hot because of his medication, and always sat at the corner table by the window, gazing out at Boston's snow-covered streets below. His voice was soft and grateful when he spoke, which wasn't often, but Lucas noticed everything about him. The way he carefully counted out exact change, then always left a generous tip. The way he held his cup with both hands, as if savoring not just the warmth, but the simple act of being alive. The way his gentle blue eyes held a mixture of sadness and strength that reminded Lucas of his own journey through grief. What Lucas didn't know was that Alex Morgan wasn't just any patient fighting for his life. Outside these hospital walls, he was worth billions, the brilliant founder of Medicare Plus, a healthcare technology company that had revolutionized patient care management in over 500 hospitals across America. His innovations had saved countless lives and earned him a fortune. But none of that mattered when you were lying in a hospital bed watching your body slowly fail. Alex had built his empire from nothing, driven by a desire to help others after experiencing firsthand the inefficiencies of the healthcare system during his mother's illness. But he'd never found someone who loved him for who he was rather than what he could provide, especially after his ex-boyfriend had not only stolen his business ideas, but outed him to the press during a vicious public betrayal that still made headlines in business journals years later. Have you ever wondered if the person sitting across from you at your local cafe might be hiding an extraordinary story behind their ordinary appearance? Follow Heart Stories for more tales that remind us how little we truly know about the strangers whose lives intersect with ours. As weeks passed, Lucas found himself looking forward to Alex's visits more than he cared to admit. He began saving the freshest pastries and brewing special batches of coffee just before Alex's usual arrival times. Their conversations started small comments about the weather, the new artwork in the hospital lobby, books they were reading. Alex mentioned he was an engineer who worked with hospitals, carefully omitting the part about owning the company that had designed their entire computer system. Lucas shared stories about his regular customers, his tiny apartment in Fenway, Boston's vibrant LGBT neighborhood, and how he'd taught himself to bake during those lonely first years after leaving home. Neither mentioned they were gay, though Lucas sometimes wondered about Alex. There was something in the way Alex watched him, a quiet understanding in his eyes that felt deeper than casual friendship. But Lucas had been burned before by assumptions. His painful breakup with a closeted medical resident 2 years earlier had left him wary of workplace romances, especially with patients. Everything changed during Boston's Pride Week when the hospital hosted its annual Pride Coffee Hour. Lucas wore a small rainbow pin on his apron the first time he'd openly displayed his identity at work. When Alex arrived and noticed the pin, something shifted in his expression. He sat at his usual table but seemed distracted, checking his phone nervously before finally approaching the counter as Lucas was wiping down the espresso machine. "I've been wanting to tell you," Alex said quietly, "but I never found the right moment." He glanced around to ensure no one was listening. I'm gay too. I just don't advertise it much. Not after what happened. The simple confession unlocked something between them. That afternoon, they spoke for nearly 2 hours after Lucas's shift ended. Alex shared abbreviated stories about coming out to his conservative family, the betrayal by his ex and his subsequent retreat from dating. Lucas talked about growing up in a small Maine town where being gay meant being isolated, about finding community in Boston, about his friend James who ran an LGBT youth center where Lucas volunteered weekends. Neither realized how the customers around them had faded away, leaving just two souls connecting over shared pain and quiet understanding. Their friendship deepened over the following weeks. Alex began timing his dialysis treatments so he could spend longer at the cafe. Lucas started finding reasons to take his breaks whenever Alex visited. They discovered mutual passions for documentary films, mystery novels, and Boston's historic architecture. Alex brought Lucas books he thought he might enjoy. Lucas saved Alex's favorite cinnamon scones even on busy mornings when they sold out before 9. Not everyone approved of their growing closeness. Nurse Patterson, known for her conservative views, began watching their interactions with obvious disapproval, whispering to colleagues when Lucas would sit with Alex during breaks. And when Alex's brother Richard appeared one day, a stern-faced executive who'd flown in from Chicago to discuss Alex's treatment options, his cold stare made Lucas feel like an intruder. As Richard pulled Alex aside, Lucas overheard snippets, inappropriate friendship, and need to be careful about your image. Later that week, Lucas accidentally overheard Alex on a phone call near the hospital entrance, discussing something about quarterly projections and board approval for the new system rollout. The corporate language seemed jarringly out of place coming from the gentle patient Lucas had come to know. Who was Alex Morgan really? And was Lucas setting himself up for another heartbreak by caring for someone whose life seemed increasingly mysterious? Sometimes the barriers between people aren't just the words left unsaid, but the truths we're afraid to hear. When we open our hearts to others, we must decide whether the risk of pain outweighs the possibility of finding someone who truly sees us. The Tuesday Alex didn't appear for his usual morning coffee was the day Lucas's world began to shift on its axis. By noon, anxiety had twisted Lucas's stomach into knots. He called the dialysis department, where a sympathetic nurse finally revealed that Alex had been admitted to intensive care after collapsing at home. His kidney function had deteriorated rapidly, and the medical team was considering emergency measures. For 3 days, Lucas existed in a fog of worry, mechanically serving customers while his mind remained fixed on the floors above where Alex fought for his life. On the third morning, Dr. Sarah Matthews, Alex's nephrologist, and one of the few openly lesbian physicians on staff, stopped by the cafe. Her expression softened when she saw Lucas's pale face. "He's stabilized," she said quietly, "but we've moved him to the top of the transplant list. Without a new kidney soon." She didn't need to finish the sentence. The unspoken truth hung between them like a shadow. That evening, Lucas couldn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table until dawn, his laptop glowing as he researched living kidney donation, compatible blood types, recovery timelines, or just and risks. He read forum posts from LGBT donors who discussed the additional scrutiny and outdated policies they sometimes faced in the donation process. By morning, his decision had crystallized with surprising clarity. Lucas made an appointment with Dr. Matthews, arriving at her office with dark circles under his eyes, but determination in his voice, mowing. "I'd like to be tested as a potential donor for Alex," he stated simply. Dr. Matthews studied him carefully. "Lucas, do you understand what you're asking? The surgery carries risks. The recovery is significant. And there's no guarantee you'll be compatible. He's a good person, doctor. Everyone deserves a chance." What Lucas didn't share was how Alex had become a beacon in his lonely life, how their morning conversations had given him something to look forward to when grief and isolation threatened to overwhelm him. He didn't mention the way Alex remembered details about Lucas's life that even his closest friends forgot, or how Alex's rare smile made the cafe feel warmer somehow. The testing process took 3 grueling weeks blood work, tissue typing, psychological evaluations, and medical clearances. Lucas told no one, not even his friend James. He worked his shifts at the cafe, maintained normalcy, and quietly underwent the extensive evaluation process that would determine if he could save Alex's life. During this time, Lucas made another discovery. While waiting for a lab appointment, he picked up a business magazine in the hospital lobby. There on page 37 was Alex's face, more polished and confident than the tired patient Lucas knew, under the headline, Medicare Plus CEO Alexander Morgan revolutionizes hospital data systems. The article detailed his rise from coding prodigy to healthcare technology magnate, his philanthropic work, and his estimated billion-dollar net worth. Lucas felt the floor shift beneath him. Had every moment between them been built on lies? Was he just another charity case for a bored billionaire seeking entertainment during treatment? He almost canceled his final compatibility test, but something stopped him. The memory of Alex's unguarded laughter when Lucas had told him about the hospital's ancient coffee machine breaking down, spraying grounds everywhere. That laughter hadn't belonged to a man playing games. When the test results finally came back, Dr. Matthews called Lucas personally, her voice filled with amazement. Against all statistical probability, Lucas was not just compatible, but a perfect match, the kind of match usually only found between close relatives. The universe, it seemed, had its own plans. A week later, as Lucas signed the final consent forms, Dr. Tom Matthews asked the question he'd been avoiding. "Does Alex know it's you?" Lucas shook his head. "And I'd like to keep it that way. I don't want him to feel obligated to me because of this. Please, doctor, this isn't about recognition." As they prepared to wheel Lucas toward the operating room the following morning, he caught a glimpse of Alex being transported in the opposite direction. Lucas whispered a prayer that they would both wake up whole on the other side of this life-changing day. Sometimes the greatest acts of love are performed in silence, without expectation of reward or recognition. True giving asks nothing in return but the knowledge that someone else might continue breathing in a world that needs their presence. Lucas drifted in and out of consciousness during recovery, his first coherent thought being a whispered question to his nurse. "Did it work? Is he okay?" The nurse smiled reassuringly. "The surgery was a complete success. Your kidney is functioning perfectly in its new home." Lucas closed his eyes and let tears of relief stream down his cheeks. Somewhere in this hospital, Alex was beginning his new life with Lucas's kidney, and that knowledge filled him with a happiness more profound than anything he'd ever experienced. James arrived shortly after, having been listed as Lucas's emergency contact. His expression shifted from concern to disbelief as Lucas explained what he'd done. "You gave your kidney to a patient you barely know?" James asked, adjusting his glasses. "The same Lucas who wouldn't even give me his Netflix password." Lucas managed a weak laugh. "It's complicated. It's always complicated with you," James replied, but his eyes were kind. He stayed at Lucas's apartment during the recovery, helping him navigate the physical limitations and emotional waves that followed major surgery. Meanwhile, Alex woke to a world transformed. The constant fatigue that had weighed him down for months was already beginning to lift, replaced by a strength and clarity he'd nearly forgotten existed. His first words were to thank his surgical team, followed by a request to Dr. Matthews, "Please find a way to thank my donor. They didn't just save my life, they gave me hope again." Matthews promised to pass along his gratitude, keeping her expression carefully neutral. Even Richard, who arrived with a laptop full of company business, noticed the change in his brother. "You look like yourself again," he said, an unfamiliar softness in his voice. Lucas returned to work after 2 weeks of recovery, moving carefully to protect his healing incision, but smiling more brightly than his coworkers had seen in years. He'd told everyone he'd had a minor procedure, and most were too polite to ask for details. When Alex appeared at the cafe counter for the first time post-surgery, Lucas had to grip the counter to steady himself. The transformation was remarkable. Alex's color had returned, his posture was straighter, and his eyes held a vitality that took Lucas's breath away. "You look wonderful," Lucas managed to say, meaning it with every fiber of his being. "I feel like I've been given a completely new life," Alex replied, his voice stronger than Lucas had heard it in months. "My donor, Bueno, whoever they are, gave me everything. I wake up every morning grateful to be alive." Their conversations over the following weeks grew deeper than ever before. Alex talked about his plans for the future, expanding his company's charitable initiatives, designing systems for underserved rural hospitals, maybe even taking a vacation after years of unrelenting work. Lucas listened with joy radiating from every pore, thrilled to see him dreaming again, planning again, living again. But he also noticed something else in the way Alex looked at him now, a new intensity, as if he was seeing Lucas clearly for the first time. Alex began arriving earlier and staying longer, their conversations stretching from coffee orders into deep discussions about life, love, and second chances. 3 months after surgery, Alex made a decision that would change everything. He approached Dr. Matthews in her office, his expression resolute. "I need to know who my donor is," he insisted. "Not just to thank them, but because I keep having this feeling, this connection I can't explain." After much deliberation and several conversations with the hospital's ethics board, Dr. Matthews agreed. The following Tuesday morning, Alex arrived at the cafe with an expression Lucas had never seen before: nervous, excited, and completely focused on him. "Lucas," Alex said, approaching the counter with hands that trembled slightly, "I know who my donor is." Lucas's coffee pot nearly slipped from his grasp as he met Alex's eyes, seeing his own secret reflected there. The world narrowed to just this moment, this breath, this heartbeat shared between them. True healing begins when we recognize the bridges others have built toward us, sometimes at great personal cost. When someone crosses an ocean to reach us, perhaps the most courageous response is simply to say, "I see what you've done with it, and I'm forever changed by it." "It was you, wasn't it?" Alex whispered, eyes never leaving Lucas's face. "You saved my life." Lucas nodded, unable to speak around the emotion closing his throat. "But why?" Alex asked, voice breaking. "Why would you risk everything for me?" "Because the world is better with you in it," Lucas finally said. "Because your kindness made my hardest days bearable. Because when I looked at you, I saw someone worth saving." Alex came around the counter then, pulling Lucas into a gentle embrace. "I need you to know something," he said softly. "I'm not just an engineer with kidney disease. I have resources more than I probably deserve. I've been trying to find the courage to tell you because I was afraid you'd see me differently." "I didn't save you for money, Alex." Lucas pulled back to meet his gaze. "I saved you because somewhere between Tuesday morning coffees and Friday afternoon conversations, I fell in love with your gentle heart, your grateful spirit, and the way you made me believe in goodness again." Alex's face transformed with the most beautiful smile Lucas had ever seen. "I love you too," he said. "I've loved you since the morning you remembered exactly how I needed my coffee. I've loved you since you saved me the last cinnamon scone on that terrible day when my test results came back worse than expected. I loved you before I knew you'd literally given me life, and I'll love you for every day that life lasts." Their journey wasn't simple. Richard initially reacted with suspicion to their relationship, questioning Lucas's motives. The Boston Herald published a story about the billionaire CEO and the barista who saved him, bringing unwanted attention. Lucas struggled with the sudden spotlight and the vast difference in their financial circumstances. "I don't belong in your world," Lucas confessed one evening as they walked along the Charles River. "Then we'll build a new one," Alex replied, taking his hand. Together. 6 months later, they stood in the hospital chapel surrounded by the medical team who'd witnessed their journey. Dr. Matthews smiled from the front row. James served as Lucas's best man. Even Richard attended, his expression softened by witnessing genuine love triumph over his prejudices. Lucas continued working at the cafe because He couldn't imagine leaving the place where he'd found his purpose and his love. Alex used his resources to establish the Reynolds Morgan Foundation, helping LGBT youth access healthcare and supporting living organ donors from marginalized communities. Together, they created a life that honored both their pasts. Lucas's simple warmth and Alex's visionary drive combining to help others find the same healing they discovered in each other. Their story inspired changes in hospital policies for LGBT donors and recipients, breaking down barriers that had existed for decades. 1 year after their wedding, they hosted Boston's first Pride in Life celebration, bringing together LGBT organ donors and recipients to share their stories and encourage others to register as donors. The event ended with Lucas and Alex planting the first tree in what would become the Second Chance Garden outside Massachusetts General Hospital, a place where anyone could find peace and remember that sometimes love arrives in the most unexpected packages. Have you ever considered how one act of courage can ripple outward, touching countless lives beyond your own? What would you risk to save someone who matters to you, even if they might never know it was you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to Heart Stories for more tales of extraordinary love and sacrifice hiding in ordinary moments. Because sometimes, the most remarkable stories are unfolding right next to us, quietly waiting to be seen.